everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Inside. I always want to say the Horror Inside podcast, but I guess we're a little bit more than that. We do reviews, we do streaming, we do a lot of things, but
Yeah,
all
but
things
this is the
horror.
podcast. This is the
That's true.
podcast side of our channel, so either way.
Either way, either way, welcome. I guess this is a podcast discussion like everything we do, but also kind of a review. I don't like to call it that because we don't really critique or do it. We just talk about what we like about this type of stuff. So
Right.
anyway, so
Right.
today we're talking about a movie that I grew up with, and for once it's something that I showed Dylan that he was blind to, which was very, very fun and interesting. We're planning
Mhm.
on doing a lot of different movies like that where we kind of go back and forth and show each other things from our
Yes.
childhoods.
Yes, and you get the next pick or two for the next
Yeah,
movie.
because we did Scream, 4 movies long, but it was fine. I loved them all, so
Mhm.
it was worth it. So of course, after that big, long, intricate Scream podcast, and watching all those movies that have all this mystery, of course, I picked something as simple as Cujo. But that being said, I absolutely love this movie. I love Stephen King. I know that Dylan likes Stephen King as well and has grown up on a lot of his books and movies, which is why I was really surprised you had actually never like seen Cujo before, just because it's like such a classic to me in my childhood. I was like,
Yeah,
really?
before we watched it, I really could not remember if it's something that I saw when I was really young and I just didn't remember any of it,
Right.
or if I had never seen it. And I honestly still don't know if I had seen it before. I know
Right.
of course I was always aware of it, but I don't
Right.
know. This might have been my first time.
And you never read the book, right? I do want to
No,
establish that as well. Okay, so I have read
no.
the book, and I grew up with the movie. I've been watching the movie since I was a kid, like a lot of Stephen King and different horror movies that we will surely talk about. But so Dylan watched it blind, so I'm gonna start with some questions for him, and then he'll obviously have his own input and different things he wants to add. But just to get the conversation kind of started, I wanted
Yes.
to I guess start with. So my first question for you, Dylan, is what did you think of? This is kind of a question I ask you whenever we watch a movie, and I really like the actors in it. What did you think of the acting, specifically Dee Wallace as Donna Trenton, who I think is amazing, but I'll give my opinion after you do, and Tad Trenton, Tad Trenton is played by Danny
Oh, this.
Pintauro.
Yeah, the
So
sun.
the
Yeah.
son, yes. So those are like the two main characters, and I think the best two actors in the film. So what do you personally think of the two of them?
Well, I thought they were both really, really great, and
Hmm.
a couple things on both of them.
Hmm.
But we've been talking about, you wanted to show me this movie for a long time,
Right.
and you always said that Stephen King said that Dee Wallace is like his favorite performer in any of his movies. Um,
Yes.
and while we were watching it, I was like, well, yeah, she's good and she's relatable and she feels like a
Realistic,
real mother
authentic.
and a
Yeah.
real person.
Yeah.
But I didn't quite see that
Hmm.
until the whole ending bit with her in the car, that whole, you know, finale of all that
Hmm.
and how amazing she was in that. And now I completely see what he's saying. Um,
Yeah.
there was even that one specific line that you said was a big reason why people think she's so great.
Yeah. So I read I know so many facts about all the movies I love, but I had read somewhere that Stephen King, and even they said like mothers specifically, like just general like mothers who had seen the movie could so relate to Donna when she's in the car, and it's like almost at the very very end. So she's been through some shit. I think she's already gotten bit by Cujo.
Mhm.
Again, there's going to be a ton of spoilers in this. I probably should have said that earlier. Anyway, I mean anybody watching this probably assumes that, but anyway, so I think it's like she's just completely just done and drained and exhausted, and her son is just like obviously screaming. He's a kid. He's scared to death, and he's like
Yeah.
screaming, and he keeps saying, "I want daddy, I want daddy." And she at first she's trying to be the calm mother. Okay, okay, like okay, and then finally she's just like he just keeps crying and wanting his dad, and she probably feels so helpless. And the fact that he wants his dad, she probably feels like, oh my god, like he feels like I can't protect him. Like she's probably going through all this shit in her head that a mother probably would do in that situation. So it's like a moment of just genuine like annoyance, frustration, not really at her son, but just obviously the situation, and he's kind of adding to it by his screaming and everything. So she literally says, "All right, I'll get you, daddy," and she screams it like at him, not again meaning to take it out on him, but it's just like, and
Yeah.
so many mothers have said that is the most relatable moment in that movie.
No, I thought that moment was great because I was just
Yeah.
thinking like, um, in her head she's probably like, all right, but I'm here right now and I'm trying to fucking help you and save
Exactly.
you,
That's
and
what.
it's like he's not here, and maybe he's not here partly because of her own doing and the other things she's done in
Right.
this movie.
Which I definitely want to talk about
So
that. Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
that, and then also I like it was I'm not a a parent, but
Right,
I
right.
have
Me
nephews.
neither, for the
I
record.
I have nephews, and yeah, that's a little relatable. Where you're just
Yes.
like you're trying to be calm, and if they're upset, and console them, and then you're in your head. If it keeps going on, you're just like, all right, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly. And add that to an already stressful, like, bad situation anyway, and just going through a bunch of shit, like,
Right,
prior to that, she probably was just so fed up. But yeah, I think I love that line. I love, again, like you said, that the whole ending, the whole climactic ending with them stuck in the Pinto, which we're gonna talk more about the whole
right,
ending. But just on her, she's great. I've always loved her. When I read that she was literally Stephen King's favorite in any of his movies, and again, he may, that I think that he said that when the movie had maybe first come out, or maybe a couple years, so maybe his opinions changed, who
right.
knows, but I think she's great. Um, there
And
was
I
something
do want
else I
to
wanted to say and
throw
I
in
couldn't remember.
to add on to her. One of the first movies we did sort of review on the podcast was the Halloween movies. And
Oh
um,
yeah, her cameo.
say what you will about Rob Zombie, but we even spoke about this when we talked about his movies, his Halloween
He's got
movies.
good taste in his
He
in his
certainly
cameos.
respects he certainly
Yeah,
respects the genre and the actors because he brings so many people
exactly.
back and so many classic people. And I know
Yeah.
you got really excited when you saw she. I don't know if I told you she was in that movie before or she just popped up and
I
um
I think you had told me, because I kept, one day I was just
right.
going on about Cujo and you were like, well, I think you did end up telling me, but I was still hyped nonetheless when I
Yeah.
saw her. So so it
And
didn't ruin it.
that was really fun and her performance in
Yeah.
that movie was also really great and human and real and relatable. There's even one line just
Yeah.
speaking of performance, particularly in that movie, where like, and I love we said this before that she was not written, and thankfully Rob Zombie didn't do this to her. He didn't write her as a Rob Zombie character. She was allowed to
Right.
be Wallace and be great and amazing and
I
real
love
and
that.
because there was the one line where her husband was like, "We talk about the vacation," and or no, he said talking about like loving or whatever, and she said, "Yeah, well, we'll talk about the vacation, and then we can talk about something like that."
Yeah, yeah, I kind of remember that. I remember like chuckling and I'm like, oh, that's so Dee Wallace, because I love, like, she always has this incredible ability from anything. And honestly, I'm just gonna be completely honest. I don't want to act like I know her career extensively, but the few number of movies I have seen her in, she blows me away to the point where it's like I actually may end up going through her IMDb and seeing if there's anything that catches my eye, because I just love her and I think she deserves
Right,
more credit. So that's why I'm so glad Stephen King said what he said. It's a bold statement because he's got so many big stars and so many, big movies that are bigger than Cujo and bigger than Dee Wallace. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. And the fact that he was like, no, she's amazing. She plays that character so well. He's 100% right. And I mean, I've only ever seen her in E.T. Of course, she's super known for that. I think that's the first one listed on her IMDb.
hmm
And then Cujo is the only other one I've seen. But I've seen, and then obviously when I saw her make the cameo on Halloween, I was like hype. And then it's funny that we're doing this podcast now, because I kind of forgot, but the other night I was watching The Office. Shout out, love The Office. You need to watch it, Dylan. But anyway, she actually makes a cameo in that, and she's a total bitch, and I kind of forgot. But going back to her,
that's great.
she is like, she's like I mean, I guess one could argue that she's kind of a bitch in Cujo for other reasons, which we will get to. But I think she redeemed herself obviously as a strong character that comes through in the end against the horror that she has to face. But
Right, but I'm just
um
imagining that actually, if I ever do watch The Office, that would be fun to see. Just see her play like an awful person, like a
Yeah, it's hard. I don't want to, like. I mean, I do want you to watch The Office eventually, so I don't really want to give anything away. But she's kind of like the complete opposite of what she plays in Cujo and actually E.T. She's like a horrible mother in The Office, and anybody that watches The Office will know exactly what I'm talking about and which character. One of the main characters is actually her son, one of the main people in The Office that a lot of people love that character,
hmm
and he's like real ashamed and he's trying to impress his parents, and both of them are dickheads. And I forget who plays the dad, but he's known too, and they just make little cameos in a couple episodes. But yeah, she's a bitch. But anyway,
That's
um,
great.
but I think she's one of those actresses, and there's only like maybe a couple other ones that I can think of off the top of my head, but like she's one of those ones that has this ability to make everything so authentic. And I'm not even just talking about when she screams and freaks out at the end. Any scream queen can kind of put on like a screamy whatever. I mean, she's still great at that too, but like I'm talking about, like, even in like her dialogue scenes and just her sounding like an exhausted mom sometimes. She does that a lot in ET, where she just sounds like a mom, and it's just like, wow, my mom has sounded like that. Maybe I've annoyed my mom sometimes because she has sounded that tired and drained before. And it's like she just is very, very. And I'm not a mom, but she's so authentic and relatable, I think. So yes, I definitely had to rave about her for a second because I absolutely love her, and I'm so glad Rob Zombie did something smart. And had
I know.
her
I
make
think
a cameo.
I said this, one of the last times we talked, but I said if he had written her like a Rob Zombie character, that would have been so disrespectful to her, and I would have
To
hated it.
her.
But
Exactly.
uh, but there was something else in her character kind of that I thought was funny when we were watching the movie. The only thing I really knew about this movie, besides the obvious Cujo, but the only thing I
Right.
really knew was that infidelity had something to do with it. And
Yeah.
before going into it, I don't know why, I just assumed it was the husband cheated on her. So that was an
Oh,
interesting
yeah. I
turn
loved
that
that.
I didn't
No,
expect because I don't know why I just
yeah.
assumed it was him. I don't
No,
know.
yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because
I
I kind
guess
of
I just
forgot
didn't
about that,
see,
but
her doing that, for whatever reason, and they
right.
also don't really explain too well why she does that. But
Right. I think the book may again a little bit more. I haven't read it in years, so I actually do not remember, but maybe the book goes in. I think maybe it had something to do. I don't really know because Vic is her husband. He's played by, oh God, what's his name? I have the IMDb up. I need to pull it up. He's a pretty good actor too, but Vic Trenton is the husband, and I think in the book maybe it says something, and again, I don't really remember, but it may say something along the lines of like he was like a workaholic because I think they try to sort
right.
of have that portrayed in the movie, like when
Yeah,
that
I
thing
was gonna
all
say
goes down.
that
Yeah.
probably was the only thing that came across to me that as a potential maybe reason.
Right, because he has to like travel a lot maybe for work and she
Yeah,
feels lonely or whatever. I'm not, again, I don't want anybody to quote me on this because I haven't read Cujo in years. I would like to read it again. I have it. I just haven't gotten. I'm reading Pet Cemetery over again, like always. It was like my 20th time reading that one, um, but yeah, no. To wrap up about her though, I often wonder how many of the way she delivers the lines were sort of like not really improvised, but like when she does scream at Tad when he's having his freak out and she says, "I'll get you, Daddy," and she yells it and she's really aggressive. I almost wonder if the line was written like, "Okay, I'll get you, Dad," like because or maybe some other actors would have seen that line and been like, "Okay, I'll get you," and like very calm and trying to calm the kid down. But I think I don't know if she was a mom at that time. I don't even know if she has kids now. I don't know that much about her, but I need to find out more because I absolutely love her. And so I don't know if she could just relate to being a mom in a stressful situation or if she's just that good of an actress. Either way, she's amazing either way. So moving on from her though, if you want to talk a little bit about Danny Pintar, I'm not really 100% sure how to say his last name and I haven't seen him in a whole lot, but apparently he's done a
I think
couple
that's
other
how you say
things.
his name. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm positive he must have. We probably should have looked up what that was. But when we were watching the movie and his name showed up, his name immediately sounded familiar to me.
Well, it says he was on a sitcom, and I think it was probably after Cujo, so probably in the 80s. Yeah, it's called Who's the Boss, which I've heard of, but I've never watched it.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, I've
yeah,
heard
he's
of
done
that
a
too.
couple other things, but
That makes
this was
sense. And
obviously his first role. Yeah.
no, I think he was also really great. I think you said something when we were watching it or before we started watching it that he was kind of his child acting was, so you said something like was like as good as some of our other, favorite
Favorites.
child
Yeah.
actors in horror who are often amazing, and that's like Alex Vincent, Andy, and Danielle Harris, Jamie, things like that. And after
Nico
seeing the movie,
Hughes.
Nico
Yeah.
Hughes, after seeing the movie, yeah, he totally belongs in the same category. Not like
Yeah.
he's just so believable. There wasn't like a fake moment or like an annoying kid moment.
I know
Um,
he's so genuine. He must have got that from Dee Wallace. She must have spent some time
and then
with him
it,
because they come off so well as mother and son. Like
yeah,
it fits.
and then at the end when he's having like that heat stroke seizure
Oh, when his
kind of
eyes
thing,
are rolled back in his head. Yeah.
that was fantastic. And I don't know
I know.
like what they told him to
To
be
do.
able to do that convincingly.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that was scary and it was really well done. And there was even a little moment where she like, I think you might have even said that this might have not been a scripted thing, but like she like puts her fingers in his mouth, and I immediately saw that. It's like, oh yeah, you don't do that with someone who's having a seizure.
Yeah, yeah,
They're gonna bite your fingers off. So I
yeah,
remember you said something like you don't even know if like he actually bit her or something. That was a real reaction.
yeah, yeah. No, it was. I read that. It said like when Dee Wallace sticks her finger in Danny Pintaro's mouth in the Pinto scene, or when he's like freaking out in the Pinto, he actually did like bite down on her, and that was her real reaction, going "ow" and pulling it out. Like, but again, that's awesome that they were both able to stay in character because there's no cut after she says that. They were just both like he didn't start like laughing and say haha sorry as a little kid may have done in that situation. Like he kept going, she
Right.
kept going. Like she definitely had a strong counterpart, even though he was only like I think in this movie maybe 5 at the oldest. So he definitely does belong in that category. I mean, like I said, he's right up there with Miko Hughes. Miko Hughes' age because he was younger makes him still the top dog, and he always will be.
Mhm.
But I think Danny Pintaro, held his own. So he's amazing.
Yeah, and he definitely belongs in that group. Definitely
Yeah,
belongs
I
in that
agree.
group because there's not that many child actors, period, or child actors in horror specifically that aren't annoying or
Right.
kind of
No,
like
he's so convincing, but
sickly cute or something.
right. No, I know, and he's so convincing when he does, obviously the seizure scene, and then there's obviously all the scared scenes of him crying and screaming, which are very, very like, I mean, there are scenes where he is legit bawling his eyes out. So I don't know if like what you said, it was the 80s, maybe they did something fucked up prior to make him kind of scared. Maybe he really was scared of the actual dogs that they had, although I find that hard to believe, and I will talk about that in a little bit why, because apparently the dogs were really sweet, because Saint Bernards are sweet. But I don't know, they must have unless he just had it in him or something. I don't know what they did, but they really brought out his fear and the screaming and the crying, and I was like, oh my god.
Well, I would hope they didn't do anything too messed up with him. But I even
Right.
said this like I feel like they got away with things back then with kids that they wouldn't get
Yeah.
away with now. Like I told you in Halloween, there's a scene where Danielle Harris is crying uncontrollably, and she said that they did that because the director threw her in a closet and locked her in the closet.
I know, that's so fucked up.
So they feel like they get away
Oh,
with things back then, but I would hope that
yeah.
his performance was more wasn't
Just genuine. Yeah.
wasn't manipulated out of him like that.
Right. I know. I would love, like, I don't actually know, because the movie is kind of underrated, at least in my opinion, that I don't know if they actually have ever had like a full Blu-ray release or anything with, like, I even remember when I owned the DVD, which I unfortunately don't anymore because it got lost in the many moves that we've had. But I even remember when I had that DVD, though, it was kind of like my Pet Cemetery DVD, which it was just like, I think it was just like, play the movie, subtitles,
Right.
and then like just the common stuff that comes on, like nothing behind the scenes. So I would actually
I
like
don't
to
know.
see like a full.
I feel like it's such a big thing that even I didn't. I obviously knew what it was because it was such a big Stephen King story, and it's.
Right.
I mean, it's very iconic. Yeah, it was like embedded in pop culture or whatever. It's like everybody knows
That's true.
Cujo and what Cujo is, and Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like there's got to be some like Blu-ray release. I'm sure there's like panels and things with the actors. I would be surprised if there
I
wasn't.
need to look as big as a fan as I am of the movie, I really should know more about. I mean, I would hope so. That would be awesome, and I would buy it in a heartbeat if there's like special behind the scenes, because I would love to hear Danny Pintaro talk about it, and like know exactly, like, maybe there was some shit that was kind of manipulated, or maybe it literally all was just him, which I would believe. He's very, very good. He's even good in the scenes where he's not freaking out and screaming. Like, he has a really, really good chemistry with his, mom and dad actors like Dee Wallace and, oh God,
Yeah,
what's
I
his
thought
dad?
I can't remember exactly what he did, but vaguely remember a scene at the beginning. It's like a dinner table, and he's like doing something funny or silly with the
Yeah,
dad.
yeah, because like there's like some tension between Donna and Vic, because it's right after the scene where, you spoilers, find out she's cheating on him, and they're sitting at the dinner table, and it's almost like he suspects it right off the bat. Like, as soon as the audience is aware of what's going on, it's almost like Vic Trenton starts to kind of get a feel for it, like almost like he's kind of suspected it for a while, because he says at the dinner table, he says, well, this family's running out of things to talk about because they're just being quiet,
Oh
and she
yeah.
just kind of looks at him, and then the little boy, I guess, kind of maybe sensing his parents are like maybe at a little, what, I mean, there's obviously no way he could know what the actual tension is about, but he kind of senses something, so he goes under the table, and he like does like the Jaws music, and like is like moving his hand
Oh, I
closer to his
remember
dad.
now.
It's so
Yeah.
cute. And then he's like, gotcha, and then his dad like tickles him and he laughs. Like, he's just very, they just seem like a real family, which is one thing I've always loved about Stephen King's movies, and even the books obviously, but the movies always, like, Pet Cemetery comes off very, very well, obviously in the original, which I shouldn't even have to say, but they come off as like a real family. And same even with The Shining. I know Stephen King has a lot of stuff that he said about The Shining, but I personally love the movie, the Stanley Kubrick version, and even though it did
Mm.
stray from the book, which I did read the book, but even they come off as a real family until fucking Jack Torrance goes completely nuts, and Jack Nicholson plays that so well. But anyway, that should
Yeah.
be another movie we talk about eventually.
Well,
But anyway.
yeah, back to the scene that you at the dinner table. Now that I remember
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
going back to what I said about his performance not being like too sickly sweet and obnoxious. Like
Right.
that scene in the hands of another child actor could come off like that, like really
Like
like
cheesy and dumb
cheesy
and
and annoying and
yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree completely. It was it felt, again, real. I don't know how these all these actors had the ability to just make them feel like a real family. I don't know if like they had the actors kind of spend some, because I know, going back to Pet Cemetery, Denise Crosby said to kind of get Nico, who's familiar with her, and Dale Midkiff, and what's her name? Blaze Berdal, is that how you
For
say
yeah,
Ellie's?
yeah,
Yeah, she said they had them all kind of like bond prior to filming or whatever. She said, they wanted him to get used to me being like his movie mom, and so he was introduced to him and her
right,
and Dale
yeah,
Midkiff and everything. So like maybe like even though Danny Pintauro was obviously a little bit older than Miko Hughes was when he filmed Pet Cemetery. Maybe they kind of did the same thing, and that's why the chemistry feels so real. Again, this is why I really want to watch some behind the scenes. So I did read a lot of facts about the movie, but I've never seen an actual documentary or even interviews. So I should really look that up. I should have probably done that before we did this, but it'd be interesting to know, how they got their performance out of him. I mean, again, he could just be a completely brilliant actor, and either way, even if some stuff was manipulated, he still had to portray that, and I think he did an amazing job either way. So if you just want
mhm,
to wrap up about him, I'm glad you agree
yeah,
because kids are sometimes tricky in horror, but he's definitely one of the good ones.
definitely, yeah. Because when we were watching it, I remember saying at some point like that I thought it felt very small to me. Like you said at the beginning, it is a simple movie. I
Right.
was saying, and not in a negative, but like I was saying, it felt small, like it could be like I don't, like a TV kind of thing.
Right, like a TV
Um,
movie. That makes, yeah,
until the whole ending, which
the
really made
climactic.
it. And
Yeah.
but I feel like then, in retrospect, and it was a similar thing, I believe, with Poltergeist, which unfortunately we
Oh
never
yeah.
got around to reviewing, but maybe in the
Yeah.
future. But it was
You
a
mean
similar thing.
definitely in the future. That's one of my favorites. I'm making you talk about that one.
But it was a similar thing where that movie was very slow burning,
In the beginning. Yeah.
it's a good thing sometimes. Sometimes movies don't know when to take their time, but having seen the entirety of
Yeah.
Cujo, I definitely appreciate the
The build up.
slower build up
Yeah.
beginning, and it works so well because of those actors. Because things like that can sometimes not work. And
I
it's
agree.
all on the
Yeah.
shoulders and the capability of the actors. Because if it's if it's someone who can't hold your attention
Yeah.
till stuff happens, then it kind of
Then it just
movie
comes across boring.
and
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah, I agree.
But this movie definitely did.
I see, and I maybe because I personally love older. I like older everything. I've talked about this a million times. Older music, older movies, older video games, whatever you want. Like I just live in that nostalgia world. I'm a hipster, I guess people would call me. I don't even really know what that means, but that's what people have said. But I guess because I love older horror movies. A lot of the horror movies that I am really familiar with and love do have that slow sort of burn in the beginning. They start off very simple with like a happy family usually. Like, Poltergeist was the same way. It started off with this very believable family with actors that just feel like it kind of just feels like the cameras are turned on and it's like they're shooting a documentary of a family. Like it does, and that's what I like because it feels so
Hmm.
real. So that when the horror does happen, you're more like, "Oh shit," because it feels so real and raw and like I don't know. I mean, Amityville
Right.
Horror is the same way. I can't wait to show you that. Like the I mean, that one that one could be considered a little bit dated and even certain things in it I can agree with, but I mean overall it's a classic. It's really really good. It has the same family dynamic and before all the horror hits,
Mm.
and
And I have
I
seen
like that.
that one. I have seen that one.
Oh, you have? Okay, good. I was
Yes,
gonna say
one.
that one's like a big
Only
classic. Yeah,
once, but I have seen
but
it. But
yeah, and I'm sure
no,
when you watch it more will come back to
I
it
really like
because
stuff like that too. I think I love when things take their time with character and things like
yeah.
that. Um, think if it's like a movie I haven't seen before, like this and Poltergeist, I feel like
Hmm.
I'm waiting to see if the
What's gonna happen
payoff
is worth it.
is worth it. Because if it's not worth it, then it's kind of like, all right, well, I don't
Yeah,
like if I don't care about the characters, like okay, I just kind of wasted my time.
right. No, I
Um,
agree. And we
but that's
both are
not the
so
case with this
character
movie.
driven, you and I, and story driven that I know that
Yeah,
we agree a lot on that type of stuff. Yeah, instead of
I
just
feel like in examples of a movie like this, I feel like I would then go back because I did enjoy it this time, but I feel like if when I ever go back and watch it again myself,
yeah.
I'll appreciate it a lot more, the whole thing while I'm
Yeah,
watching it.
that's true. That's a good way to look at it because I feel like when you're first watching a quote unquote horror movie, you're waiting for the horror. You're like waiting for shit to go down. I can
I,
see where you're you're,
yeah,
you're saying that. Yeah.
kind of like, and because we just reviewed them with Scream, a similar thing. Like you,
Mhm.
a few of them, you were like,
Yeah.
kind of just like, okay, I just want to get to the end because I want to find out who did this and whatever.
Yeah, the mystery of it killed me, but yeah, no, and that's probably the same for me then when I do go watch and go back and watch the Scream movies and I'm actually possibly doing that pretty soon because I know my boyfriend really wants to see them since he caught the end of Scream 4 and kind of ruined the whole ending for himself. But He said he wants to watch. He's like very intrigued now and wants to watch them all because he's
Well,
never seen them.
it's
So
good that those movies don't sort of reference the other movies too much. So he didn't
that's
like
true.
spoil the other movies because of that. But no, you'll have to
Right.
let
What
me
he
know what he
thinks.
thinks of them when you get to them.
Yeah, no, I definitely will. I think we're gonna do it on like maybe this weekend because I have a 3-day weekend because of Labor Day. Woo woo. Anyway, so maybe because we have a nice long weekend because he's off on the same days I am. Maybe we'll do it then, and then I can let you know what he thinks. He is absolutely obsessed with like mystery plots and things that have like a big twist. Like I can get him to watch anything, even like some cheesy girly movie, as long as it has like a really good story. He's like compelled. So I absolutely love that because he's very open minded about that stuff. But yeah, as I was saying, if I do go back and rewatch them and I show him them, I probably will be exactly what you're saying. I'll probably be more focused on little things and appreciative of little things that maybe I didn't really notice the first time around with the characters before all the shit hits the
Yeah.
fan, because you're kind of looking more for things because you already kind of know what to expect. So yeah, that's a good perspective and a good, I think that's true. When you're first seeing something, it's different versus when you go back. So that's
Hmm.
a good point. But that being said, just to wrap up on some of the subtlety of Cujo. I think movies, and again, I hate to always say nowadays, because I actually have come around to newer horror movies a lot. I absolutely really adored It. I thought it was really good. I cannot wait for It Chapter 2, which is actually next weekend. Woo woo. I loved Scary
Yes.
Stories. I
And
loved A Quiet Place.
expect podcasts on It and Scary
Spoilers! Like, I'm just kidding.
Stories. It and
Yeah,
Scary Stories very
I
soon.
know, and
By
I
the
just
time this
mentioned both
comes
of them.
out.
That's
Yes.
actually true. That's true. So I guess it's not spoilers, so I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, at the time of this recording, it's a spoiler. But anyway, no, and like even like A Quiet Place, and there was that one, Don't Breathe, which was more like I guess like a thrillery thing. But I don't know. I've come around to sort of going to the movies and appreciating more of like the 2019 brand of horror, with the exception of fucking Pet Cemetery. That shit can go get buried and never come the fuck back because I don't fucking ever want to see that shit again. But anyway, that's the exception. But there are a lot of really decent horror movies that have been made recently that I have appreciated. But I think I will always prefer the classic style of horror. Obviously, you can't beat the classics anyway. What does Sydney say? Don't fuck with the original bitches. So yeah, there we go.
Yes. Got the
But
first rule of remakes.
exactly. But even not even just remakes, just any newer horror movie in general, even if it's a completely original story, which is so rare nowadays. Everything's basically a fucking remake because they're running out of ideas. But even the original stories, even if I can appreciate the story and like it, I miss that slow burn and more of the character. That's why I think I liked it so much, because because it's a Stephen King story, first of all, and they had to adapt it from the book. It did focus on the characters a lot, the Losers Club, which is, and it worked in this
Right.
remake, which I was nervous about, but it absolutely worked. It was great. So, but I do really miss the slow build up. I miss less jump
Yeah.
scares. I miss less, just CG, I guess. I don't know. There's just some
Yes.
things that are timeless about the older horror
Well,
movies.
it is a good example of a modern movie that did kind of it gave itself enough time to like breathe and you get into it, especially because of how long that story is. It's pretty awesome that we got like, both movies combined. It's like a 6-hour movie.
I
So
know, I do love that, which is awesome. Because, like, I mean, obviously the miniseries was long too, but it was like done as like a miniseries, so it was a little bit
yeah.
different. But seeing like an actual theatrical version of it, I'm like so excited for part two. I cannot wait. Still love the original though. We still got to give some love. I love Tim Curry, but I am really excited for part two. So. But
Hmm.
anyway, so we talked about. Wow, we thought this one would be kind of short. We spent a lot of time just talking about like a whole half hour just talking about Danny and Donna, mother and son characters. I guess we can go very, very, very briefly. We don't have to go into too much detail because they are the two pivotal main characters and the best actors in my opinion in the film. But I guess
Yeah.
to go off on some other characters, I guess we can talk a little bit about Vic Trenton, who I actually I remember when I first saw the movie, or maybe I think it comes across when you first see it, that maybe he's supposed to be like the main character first, but then Donna and Tad just completely like take over as the main characters. But it kind of like seems
Yeah.
like it's supposed to be, yeah,
Yeah,
his
I
like,
can see that. I
yeah,
like when
maybe that's
movies
why
do
you
that.
thought he was like the cheater at first, which which I loved when you said that. I was like, oh, okay, he thinks he's gonna be the scumbag in the marriage. No, it was actually Dee Wallace.
Yeah,
But
that did surprise me. I don't know. I think it was just because of her and who she is as a actress,
actors, yeah,
and you raved about her so much that I was like, oh, she's gonna just be
she
a
doesn't
nice
have any
person that
faults.
gets
Yeah.
fucked over.
Well, I think a lot of the
And then it
time,
makes you feel for her more later because it's like, oh, she just,
exactly, she
But
just
then
like had this.
it kind of is a little twisty with making it her.
Yeah, no, I like that. because in The Shining, it was obviously Jack who was kind of like the one who had the bad habits of like drinking and everything. So maybe that's why it's like the contrast between those two movies. I don't know. But then I was gonna say with Rachel though in Pet Cemetery, she's the one with more of the damage in that movie because she's like the one that has
Yeah.
the phobia of death and everything. So it's always different, I guess. But yeah, that's interesting that you thought Vic because Vic to me, who's the dad in Cujo, is like the sweetest dude ever. Like, I mean, there's not a lot to say about him because he's not as developed as Tad and Donna because, he ends up, especially for the whole climactic ending, he's kind of absent. But I think from what we do see of him, he seems like a really charming. That's why, like, I really do wish they would have given more of an explanation as to why Donna cheats on him because in the movie at least, and I don't remember if he's like this in the book, he comes across super charming, a really good dad. Remember he writes the monster words so Tad won't be scared, and he goes around his room with a flashlight and he says, "Monsters, get out of here!" Like he's such a good dad, and I think Dee Wallace's character, oh God, how did I forget her name? I just said it. Donna. Wow. She literally says that to him after he says the monster words the first time, and he walks into the bedroom. Again, this is after the audience already knows she's like cheating on him. She's laying in bed, and Vic comes in, and she's just staring at him, and she's just smiling with like a big grin on her face. And he lays down, and he's like, "What?" He doesn't know why she's smiling, and she's like, "You're just really good with him, that's all." And it's almost like you kind of know at that point that she does sort of want to cut it off, maybe with the other dude, just because he's such a
Yeah.
good dad and everything. And she's like, "You're really good with him, that's all." And then he's like, "How
And
am
there
I with
was
you?" And she's like, "Good." And I'm like, "You bitch."
but then there was like a couple scenes where she went to the guy she was cheating on with, which was
Yeah.
his friend or something or his
Yeah, and they were.
coworker.
No, I always got it confused. I always thought it was his coworker because they end up showing that guy, but no, this is just like a friend that he like plays tennis with, and I guess has been like a family friend for a while because he's like he knows Tad
Yeah.
and stuff. So
But then
yeah, I
she
think
goes to yeah, but then there's a scene where she goes and tells him, it has to end or whatever. You
yeah,
know, we don't really know if that was officially where she ended it.
that's
Um,
true.
and then there was also the scene where she felt really bad and it seemed like she didn't want her husband to leave when he was in the
Oh,
car.
yeah, yeah, I like that scene too. I know what you're talking about.
So yeah, she had remorse and it seemed like she like felt bad about it.
Right. I think the more the movie goes on and the more you see, I think the more the audience, like us as viewers, sees how good Vic is as a dad and just a character in general. Like,
Hmm.
I think it's like, oh yeah, bitch, of course you feel bad. He's like the perfect husband, and so again, I do wish there was some type of, I guess, flaw with Vic. Maybe they do try to make it seem like, oh, he's like a workaholic because he was all worried when. Which again, anybody would be worried. That's his whole livelihood when that whole commercial, like the whole thing with the cereal goes really bad, and like they get blamed for it because they were the ones that made the commercial saying there's nothing wrong here, like they have that mascot or whatever, like because he writes for like I forget exactly what he does, but he like writes ads basically for certain things. So he like wrote the ad for the cereal ends up making kids like vomit, like it's not blood, but parents think it's like their kids are like what does he say, pissing and vomiting shitting blood or whatever, but it's actually like the food coloring in the cereals or whatever that they had just like the dye in the cereal that was making them react. So I don't know if it's supposed to show he goes away because then he has to go away for a conference to try to save his job a little bit. Maybe he has to do that type of thing a lot, like go away for work. I do want to read the book again just so I can remember. But in the movie, he comes across as he has absolutely no flaws. Not that again, if he did have any flaws or worked a lot, that would warrant her to be an asshole and cheat on him. But I just like wish there was a little bit more where we could understand Donna's perspective a little bit more than we do because it just kind of looks like, oh, she's the bitch, her husband's perfect, and here she is, doing this. So like I don't know. I wish there was a little bit more, but
I could see that being something like maybe there is more explanation in the book, and how
yeah,
they do with movies, they tend to want to make things simpler. So
right,
maybe people making the movie didn't feel the need for any kind of deeper explanation.
right,
Um, but personally, I agree. I wish there was one,
right.
because it would have because we were invested in the characters.
Yeah, it would have given
So
more understanding, like instead of just
yeah,
painting Dee Wallace as like kind of just like a bitch. But I mean, I guess she had her reasons. But either way, so yeah, that
right.
actually leads me to my next question. What did you feel? What did you personally feel about the main conflict in the movie? Because just like Dina in the Film Den, we always talk about her. Go watch her, guys. She's awesome. If you type in the Film Den on YouTube, you'll find her channel. She's really, really great and does awesome reviews of a lot of horror movies. And I think she
Mhm.
even does Let's Plays now of horror games, specifically, I
Yeah.
think Resident Evil and Silent Hill. Just got to give her a shout out because I always reference her when we do a Stephen King type thing. But I remember her even saying there's always some type of sort of backstory that doesn't really necessarily have anything to do with the horror, but like, like with The Shining, it's alcoholism, which I guess, you know, that makes him more of a scary father figure. So I guess it does tie into the horror. And then obviously the death aspect in Pet Sematary, Rachel's, horrifying fear of death, which ties in. But like this is just kind of like, okay, Donna's a cheater. How do you
Right.
feel about that? Like, how do you feel about the whole infidelity thing being the main conflict?
I liked it only because it was something that I hadn't really seen in a Stephen King thing.
Yeah,
Um, and no, I like when he adds the to some people could be seemingly unnecessary layers to the story or complications to the story and the characters.
right.
But no, I really liked that for this movie. It gave more for the characters to deal with before
Right.
anything huge actually happened.
Instead of being just this perfect family where then something horrible yeah, there was already
Right.
issues
Like I think
to
when we were watching it, I told you I always, for the longest time, and I kind of had maybe seen what the family looked like. I knew Dee Wallace was in this, but for the
right.
longest time, and I said this when we were watching it, that I always thought Cujo was their pet.
Oh yeah, which is a fair assumption. I think anybody going into the movie might,
And then like something happened
assume
to
that.
him, and then they're like, oh, they notice he's starting to act weird. That's always what I
Right.
assumed.
No, yeah, that's a fair assumption, but it's actually kind of interesting the way the story. I wanted to share this anyway, so this is a good segue into this. You know that like Stephen King wrote this book when he went to a mechanic who was set up just like the
You
mechanic
did
in.
say this, yeah.
Yeah, like it was like a guy like working out of his like farm or whatever, like his barn, like he worked on cars. And I think Stephen King said he brought his motorcycle there and he just went there, by himself. He got off, he met the guy or the mechanic, and then out of nowhere, out of the barn, a huge Saint Bernard came walking out towards Stephen King, who obviously got a little nervous because I think Stephen King literally says the fucker was huge. Like I've heard him actually talk about it in interviews. So like how Stephen King is, he's so like funny. And then apparently the mechanic was like, "Oh no, he's good. He won't hurt you or whatever." But then it started growling at Stephen King, like baring its teeth. And again, they're usually very nice dogs with very good, nice temperament. So like he was like, "What the fuck?" And then it apparently went to like lunge at Stephen King, and the mechanic guy had to like whack it right on the head with like a tool, which I feel so bad hearing that story, but I guess that was the only. And then it like ran away or whatever, and I was just like, and Stephen King like said that he just started thinking like, what if it was rabid because here's this guy out on on a farm. Maybe he doesn't prioritize taking his animal to the vet, whatever. And like,
Right.
why would a Saint Bernard? Because like I said, even though Saint Bernards are huge, they are known for being so nice and like sweet with people. So why was he aggressive?
With
So I
people.
think that's
I'm glad you clarified that because I think it was like the first scene in the movie, and I was like, you were just like, oh, this cute dog, and you said something like that, and I said, but he's fucking chasing that
the
cute
bunny.
bunny.
I know.
He's an asshole,
It was like
fucking
an opening of a
dog.
Disney movie. I know.
And he got what he deserved. He got bit by a fucking
Oh, the
bat.
bat. You're awful. He's so. But it's sad. The whole story is really
I don't
tragic
care
because
about dogs in movies. I care about
oh,
bunnies
yeah, you do.
and old people.
I'm
That's it.
cracking a beer. If you want to cut around this, you can, or you can leave it in for dramatic effect. There we go. Anyway, um, no, I think the story is pretty tragic though because, and maybe because I'm a dog lover, maybe I see it like differently. But it's like here's this innocent dog at
Eh,
first, just as like a family
that's how I
dog.
feel about dogs. Eh.
You're so mean. I love
except
dogs.
except the little Sally Cahill. She's our
Oh, she's our
background
podcast dog. Yeah,
co-star.
yeah, yeah. She's not here right now too, and now I miss her.
Oh,
I think my neighbor actually said you can take her tonight if you want, and I totally forgot to run over and get her. Like she's just next door right now, but she is literally the cutest thing. But you got to keep that in because we got to reference Sally. um, no, but it's like it's not his fault. It's his owner's fault. Oh, speaking of the owner, so we did talk about. Okay, we talked about most of the characters. How'd you feel about like I guess the mechanics family, which are sort of supposed to be like the
oh,
parallel family to like Vic's
yeah.
family.
He was an
So
asshole,
he
and
was
like even like
Joe
I
Camber.
remember
That's his
just
name. The
I
Cambers.
remember him specifically being an asshole, and then you just mentioned him, and it made me remember his family. Like, what is his wife like win the lottery or something, and
Yeah,
she wants to go take their son or child to go see her
her
sister or
sister.
something, and he
Yeah,
like shuts it down, and then
yeah,
he's talking with his friends about what he wants to do with the money she won, and like
yeah.
hookers and things like that. Although they, I guess at the very least, he didn't actually say no, she couldn't go because they do actually leave at some point to go. But
Right.
What an
So
ass wife with
yeah,
money, and he's gonna get hookers and drugs and
I know. So I think and I think I remember this from the book too. So Joe Camber is for just, I'm saying this just for the listener because I know you know this already, but Joe Camber is like the mechanic that, the
yeah.
Trenton family find to help fix their cars, whatever. They're the ones that own Cujo. And they live out on some huge farm in Maine, and whatever. So yeah, they're like very, you can tell they're very poor, they work really hard, whatever. His wife's like the stereotypical housewife that cooks and cleans and takes care of the house. He does all, the mechanical stuff in out of, like, I think it's a giant barn that they have where he does all his stuff out of. And then they have a son, Brett Camber, who's like, probably like maybe like 12 at the oldest, and he like is Cujo's owner. So just to establish the family, yeah, Joe Camber is the stereotypical, like, beer drinking, like, and I don't want to like offend anybody, but, and I like beer, so I'm kind of just talking about myself, I guess, but he's like the
You're talking about
stereotypical.
us right now.
Yeah, yeah, but we're not like, hillbilly assholes that like would treat our, like, he treats his wife like shit. And I think in the book he's even worse. Like, I think it does reference, and I think it is implied in the movie, just not directly, but it's referenced heavily in the book that he is very abusive, and his wife, who's I think her name's Charity Camber. Charity and Brett are actually kind of scared of Joe, and it does come across in the movie with their reactions and stuff, but in the
Does
book I
yeah.
think it's written a lot worse. But yeah, they did a good job because it's like very subtle in the movie, but still hinted at. So it kind of makes you kind of scared for them. And when she asks, I feel so bad for her because she's like, she even buys him a present to try to ease up on it. I don't know if you remember, but he goes into the barn, which is like his workshop, and he sees this big tool that she bought from. I don't really know what it is. I don't know tools. It's like some type of saw or something that he can use for his,
Mm.
work. And then he goes in and he's like, "What the hell is that?" And she was like, "Oh, I got you a present, blah blah blah." And he's like, "Well, we can't afford it." And he starts like, and then she like is so proud to show him that she won the lottery. I think she wins like $5,000 or something. So it's not like the Mega Millions, but she wins like 5 grand.
It's probably a lot of
And
money in the 80s.
yeah,
Probably like
exactly. And to
fifty
a family
thousand
like
dollars
that,
today.
exactly. And to a family like that who are, pretty poor or middle class, whatever, like, she was probably all happy, and she goes over to him, and then she's like, all she literally wants to do is take her son away for just a week, I think she says, to visit her sister who lives in like Connecticut or something. And then he like ends up grabbing her arm and getting like really mad. He doesn't like hit her or anything, but he gets like pretty aggressive. And then you see the next scene after that, and she serves him his steak and everything. I'm like, girl, I would be snapping on his ass, but I guess this is the time difference in our generations. But like, she serves him his steak. She's so sweet. Um,
She should have like
but
collected some of Cujo's like saliva and
and
like
just dumped it.
dumped it in the pan.
Ew,
Hey, you have to
you're gonna
like
make me gag.
you gotta like grease the pan if you're cooking steak. Just put a spit in there and then he won't notice.
Stop! I have a weak stomach. That grosses me out so bad. Oh my god, that's great though.
I
Her
was gonna say
character,
his
like, her
dog
development.
shit, but he'd notice that.
Yeah, he would, and the smell. It needs to be more subtle. Like the saliva is a good one. Ew. Or his eye boogies just mix. Ooh, I gotta stop. I'm gonna gross myself out. But because like, ew, later on in the movie, fucking Cujo has that like pussy shit running from his eyes. It's so nasty.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
like he looked
they
very
fucked him up. Yeah.
good and like effective, and we were talking about how today they wouldn't spend the time to like
Yeah.
apply all that to the dog. They would just CG him up,
Yeah,
which
they
is
CG the blood. Everything would look like really like too flawlessly, and then to the point where it would look fake. Like, I just love the way they make it look so grossly real. And he gets progressively worse in each scene. Like, when he first gets bit, you just see like the spot on his nose and it's fine, and then his eyes slowly get a little droopier, and then they start running a little more, and then by the end he's just bloody and disgusting and ugh.
I also
But
did like the scenes where he was very sensitive to sound.
yeah, that's what I was getting. That's the whole point of talking about the Cambers. I was gonna get to that scene
Yeah.
Where Joe Camber is talking to, like, I guess his neighbor friend or whatever, and Cujo happens to be there or whatever, and like the neighbors like being, and they obviously up the sound because it's supposed to be from the dog's point of view. Or, well, there's actually a scene earlier than that when Joe Camber's working on like something, and he has the saw running and it's really loud, and Cujo starts kind
Hmm.
of like crying, and then he goes under the porch to get like away from it. So it's like almost at first like he can, even though it bothers him, the noise, he can kind of avoid it and get away from it. Whereas towards the end, when noise happens, he just goes berserk, which is very realistic because rabies slowly makes your, mind deteriorate if it's not taken care of, which is very scary. So yeah, there's that scene with that
So
friend, and he's like slamming beer bottles, he's like throwing them in the trash can, and then he's like, that's when they're talking about, well, she's taking the son to go visit her sister, so let's go. I think it's supposed to be like some dumb hunting trip they're supposed to be doing, but they're talking about boozing and, going to strip clubs and seeing girls, but like he's like, you got to come with me. And I'm just like, oh my God, you guys kind of deserve what you get. But yeah, and like the sounds are like very, like I think they're emphasized even more so you can kind of hear what Cujo's supposed to be hearing, and it's like, oh my God, you
Yeah.
guys are obnoxious. What do you think of the story being? This is what I'm reading my question, so if I sound like I'm rehearsed, I said, what did you think of the story being so simple and straightforward, especially in comparison to other Stephen King stories that deal more with like, not all of them, but a lot of them deal more with like the supernatural, or there's always some other type of entity that causes the horror or whatever. But in this, it's just literally a dog that gets rabies and attacks people. Like, what do you think of the simplicity of that?
I liked that because it was refreshing because usually things aren't simple. Like I said, when they make like if they adapt something from a book, they usually like to simplify things. But I also feel like
Right.
sometimes they like to overly complicate things and add things that aren't necessary.
That's
Um,
true.
the adaptations we're most familiar with, and if we
Yeah.
ever if we ever make up a drinking game for our podcast, it'll be like every time Sally Cahill is mentioned, and every time we throw back to Resident Evil, because it's every single time.
Oh, it's
But
true.
our most experience with
I'll drink
adaptations
now.
is the Resident Evil movies, and sometimes they add things that are
Yeah.
overly complicated that aren't necessary. But with this, I did ultimately when I once we finished it, I enjoyed the simplicity of it because it was refreshing. And
Yeah.
I liked that there wasn't anything supernatural with Cujo. It's like I don't know how
Yeah.
exaggerated the behavior of the dog is. Like if it was real life, I don't know that,
Right.
but
Right.
they would you would think they'd heighten things for movies, but who knows?
That's true.
But I like that it was simple and it was something that is real.
Right.
Because in the back of my head, when I always thinking about this movie because I've always been aware of it, and
Hmm.
I always knew I'd see it at some point. I always assumed there was something. There was an extra tack on of like supernatural or something. Like, oh, it's not just rabies. There's something else wrong with this dog that's
Right.
evil or something.
Well,
But
remember, you like that it was,
I
yeah.
like that it was simple
Well,
and
it's funny
real.
you. I
Real
agree completely
thing.
because I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the quote unquote supernaturally elements of Stephen King stuff. Obviously, like
No, I do
Pet
too, but
Cemetery
it's
with the
refreshing
ground
to
and stuff.
something
But
that
it's very
isn't.
different. But it's funny you say that because I think I told you this while we were watching it. I am not familiar with the Dead Zone at all. I have no idea what the story is about. I know there was a movie that's based, and the Dead Zone is another Stephen King story. But apparently in the book, and I was very confused by this. Like there were references to the Dead Zone, and the main antagonist in the Dead Zone ends up either getting killed, or I don't actually know exactly. Like a sheriff, I think, ends up killing the main guy in the Dead Zone,
Mhm.
and Stephen King really references that heavily in the Book of Cujo, and I had no idea, so I had to start like I was like, what is he talking about when he's talking about certain chapters in Cujo had nothing to do with like the Trenton family or the Camber family. There was weird references to like you know this just some I can't even fully remember how he did it, but just some references to the Dead Zone, and I was fucking confused. So I had to like Google him, and then I started reading that he basically what Stephen King was going for with the book of Cujo, and I am kind of glad they did leave this out of the movie. I don't know how they would have done it anyway, but Cujo is supposed to be because all his books are tied, which this is the part I like about it though because it makes sense that all his books are tied, but apparently the antagonist in the Dead Zone is supposed to come back through Cujo because apparently he's from the
Oh.
Cujo. Yeah, I think I may have told you that. I may not have when we were watching the
Yeah, no, I
movie, but
remember you saying that now.
yeah, so it's kind of supposed to be more supernaturally in the book, and it's very heavily implied
Well,
because Cujo takes place in the same town as the Dead Zone, like apparently the same exact place.
I
So
think that's interesting, and that would be
me
really
too,
cool if you were a huge fan of like the books and their shared connection. And I am, but not like on
exactly
a deep level where I know this
like
connects to
that,
this and this connects to
right?
this. But it's cool to just imagine that, oh, it's the Stephen King
Yeah,
universe. So that's cool, but at the same time, but so like if you were a huge fan of the Dead Zone, that would be really cool. But I
right.
feel like it wouldn't work with the movie. I like that it was simpler. It wouldn't work with the movie
I
unless
agree.
it was more overly obvious that like even their intention with making Cujo that like this
It follows
is
the Dead Zone or
a
something. Yeah,
spin-off or
yeah.
a side story to the Dead Zone. I feel like it wouldn't work unless they and I don't think the Dead Zone was even a thing like outside of books at that point. So
I know, which is why, like, maybe Dead Zone was the one he had just written prior to Cujo, and that's why he had a lot of inspiration from it still when
Yeah,
he was writing Cujo. But they even like, there's even that's the reason why apparently they have that sheriff go to the house and he ends up getting killed by Cujo. Obviously, I don't think they just have the sheriff go there for you to like have hope, like, oh, because in the book apparently the sheriff goes there because like that's Cujo getting his revenge because a sheriff killed the guy from the Dead Zone. Again, I could be completely inaccurate. This is all from me remembering back to the book, which was years ago, and from things I've read online. So it's supposed to be like, he's getting revenge on the town and the sheriff and everything. So it's pretty
right.
interesting, though. As much as I'm glad it wasn't in the movie as well, I do think it's interesting because I do love all the connections in the books. Like, even again, shout out to Judd, my favorite character in any Stephen King thing, when he says in Pet Cemetery in the book, and I wish it was in the movie because I would have loved to hear Fred Gwynn say it. But when he says, yeah, a few years ago there was a dog that went rabid, a couple, wherever he says. So it's like close to where they live,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah,
I
no, I
love
like
that.
I like when he does stuff like
He
that.
says St. Bernard specifically so that we would
Yeah,
know.
but like on like Stephen King's shared universe, like even though I've
Yeah.
never read them and I don't think they'd be books that are for me, the Dark Tower books, but
Oh, yeah.
those kind of seem like from what I've heard are like the center of the universe because
And they connect everything
it
somehow.
connects to
Yeah.
everything. Like, you
That's
know,
cool.
it's a character that kind of pops up in other things, and
Right.
it has a connection to the mist, which uh, I can explain to you when we watch the mist, which we will
Right.
eventually. But it has
Right.
connection to the mist, which is very cool. So I like that. I do like the big universe, but I think for the movie Cujo, I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah, it's better set on its own. Yeah. Another fun fact, Stephen King was drunk the entire time he wrote Cujo and actually has no memory of writing the book, which how the fuck can you still be a really, really good and articulate writer if you can't even like know what you were doing? Like that's so funny. Oh
He
my
just
god.
wrote the whole thing when he was smashed.
I know.
Maybe,
Well, I know that and I think that's how it made its way into The Shining, and I think that's honestly why a lot of Stephen King characters do drink. Not all of them are necessarily alcoholics, but a lot of them like to drink because Stephen King, like that's why I even think like, a lot of times in Pet Cemetery, because I'm rereading it, like, and I love it. I love that Judd and Lewis become really close and they sit out and have a couple beers all the time. But like, he really does write about just not even heavy drinking, just social drinking. But there's always that sort of thing in his books, and I think
yeah.
because, but he personally himself, I know, did go through like a bit, like I don't even think he drinks at all anymore. He's been like, I think he said sober for like, since
Mhm.
the late 80s or whatever. I don't know. But so, and that's why his character in fucking, in Creepshow, Jordy Verrill, just like pours the vodka in the little tiny thing of orange juice, stirs it around with the bottle, and just, I love that though. I have to say, that is great.
What made me really enjoy this movie as a whole was the and appreciate again the beginnings of the movie. I think the last half an hour or so were
Oh, when
really
they're in the car,
really well done.
stuck in the car. Yeah.
Because I thought it
Yeah.
was gonna be like oh they're there and they're there for like a couple hours or a night, but the fact that
Right.
they're stuck there for days
I
is
know.
was really cool and really scary.
Scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for them. So I really like that.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes that, so I think, again, going back to the supernatural question, like how the fact that this is more simple is that this could possibly happen. Again, like you said, it could be exaggerated for the book and movie. When a dog gets rabies, do they really, act that insane? Who knows? I know that it does say it makes you crazy. Like eventually it does affect your brain and your mental stability and everything. But like maybe it is a little dramatized, but at the same time, like the fact that this is a Stephen King story that could possibly happen, a lot of them are usually supernatural. It's like, oh, Pet Cemetery obviously couldn't really happen, or even like excuse me, oh, The Shining. Even though like a family being trapped in a hotel probably could make somebody go crazy, but I think it's like the weird supernatural elements of the hotel that sort of make Jack a little bit worse than he otherwise would be. So it's like usually there's outside influences, but this is just a dog that goes rabid that is attacking these people that are completely stranded without anybody around. Like it's like something that could be possible, which I think makes it that time like more scary. So I like the realism of that too.
There was also a couple moments that I remember now in
Hmm.
that were very creepy and very subtle and very well done in like the
Hmm.
final act
Showdown.
or what
Yeah.
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 Um One when he was throwing himself against the car, but two,
Oh yeah.
I really liked there was a part where he just like was sitting on the hood of the car and like staring at them.
Yeah, I remember I said that to you. I said this is something you won't, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I did want to say I feel like there are certain moments in this movie that you will never really see done in a movie again unless they're used as jump scares. There's even a scene where Dee Wallace first wakes up and she looks back at Tad, he's sleeping or whatever, and then she slowly turns her head to the left side of like her driver's side window, and Cujo's face is just right there, and there's no music cue, there's no loud noise, he's just there, and you just see her face, and then with him sitting on the hood, there's no music playing in the scene. You hear everything. You hear the clicking of his feet. He gets up onto the car and just lays his head down, just like he wants to. And it's during the night, like it's a night scene, which makes it even creepier because she's trying to sleep. How the fuck do you go to sleep when this fucking monster is just like climbed up on the hood and is just staring at you? I do love that subtlety. There's not enough of that anymore in movies at all. It would have been
Yeah.
jump scare. There is one jump scare. Well, there's a couple I think in this movie, but the one that stands out. And again, Stephen King also not only said that Dee Wallace was his favorite actress in anything, but he said that he thinks the most effective jump scare in any of his movies. Again, I'm not sure what year he said this. He may have a change of opinion now, especially with all the jump scares in it. But he said the most effective jump scare was the very first one, the very first time that Donna and Tad know that Cujo's there, and they're like the car stalls, it starts to shake, it starts to get fucked up, and she's like, oh shit, oh god, we're stuck, and she already kind of starts to panic because they're stuck. Well, then all of a sudden Cujo just comes up on the passenger side window, and the window's kind of open, it's kind of like cracked, and she has to like roll it up, and I think she has to like push his head in it. Yeah, that jump scare, like Stephen King said, that was the most. It's just the way it's shot, and it's not like. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, at movies are always like, there's no animals were harmed during the making of this movie, and
Oh yeah,
in that scene, I remember saying like, how did they shoot that? Was that one of the scenes where you were saying there's a part where it's a guy in a dog costume, or because his head is like
squashed? It looks like the real dog, but it could have been. I think certain scenes were manipulated well enough where you can't really tell when Cujo runs up and like is actually smashing his head like into the side of the car door. I think that's when I can kind of tell, and I think I have read that is where they do use the guy in the dog suit. But I think it is a couple times sprinkled throughout. You can kind of tell, and so maybe that was one of them. If it was, it looks pretty good though because it did kind of look real. Maybe she accidentally hurt the dog. I hope not. Because speaking of that, like another fun fact, the dogs were so nice. There was like 5 different Saint Bernards that were used in this movie apparently, and all of them were so sweet. There's even times where the dog's supposed to be being aggressive, like growling, and you can see the dog's tail wagging, which a lot of times they try to cut like past it so you can't see. At one point they had to tie the poor dog's like tail down, like kind of like I don't know how they did it, but like have a way where they like kind of tied it to its butt so that it wasn't wagging anymore because they were so excited. They thought it was all a game. It's so funny.
Well, yeah, but when we were watching, I remember saying like, why couldn't they just keep that in and like explain it as, oh, he's just so excited because he's gonna kill them. Yeah. He's gonna get food or whatever.
Well, yeah, the couple moments that they forgot to cut out or forgot to tie his tail down or whatever, like that's how it always came across to me. So I guess the director or whatever was just like, no, he looks too happy because again, Saint Bernards are so sweet, and he thought. No, go ahead.
He's just charging at them, and then all you see is tail wagging. He's like, oh, what a good boy. He's trying to kill him. Right?
He's trying to kill. Yeah, and I told you that the way they got him to jump at the Pinto and like try to get into it, and I think even the scene where the dog rips the handle off the door of the car is because they put a bunch of the dog's favorite toys and different treats and like bones and stuff in the Pinto, and that's what the dogs are actually trying to get at. So they're not trying to actually get at Dee Wallace and Danny Pintauro. It's just like there's a bunch of stuff in there.
He just wanted his favorite toy, the good boy.
Exactly.
Listen to me talking like this, and I said earlier that I don't care for dogs.
I know, right? Hey, dogs are good actors. Although Church is pretty.
Dogs are well. Dogs are better than cats. I mean, what did they say for Pet Sematary? You can only teach a cat to do one thing because they're they're probably so apathetic and mad about everything, and it's like I don't care. So they can teach them to do one thing.
Poor things, I know. But I mean, they did have 5 Saint Bernards for Cujo. It's not like they had one the whole time. So I guess like even with
they probably had like 13 churches.
That's true. So it was a lot more. They needed interchangeable Cujos, but even at one point when the dog's all covered in like syrupy stuff, I guess like supposed to be the blood or whatever, like when you can barely kind of see his face when he's all mangled at the end, they said they actually used a Rottweiler for one of the scenes, which is crazy to me because I never would have been able to get, because Saint Bernards have such a distinct look, but I think if you're covered in all that muck, I could see how a Rottweiler would work. But they said because they just couldn't get it to look menacing enough for a certain shot where he's like showing it or baring his teeth or doing something, and so they used a Rottweiler for one take. And I was like, I have never been able to tell what take it is. Maybe if I pay attention a little more the next time I watch it, but I've never been able to tell. But apparently it's true that they used a Rottweiler, so that's interesting.
Right. I think they did a good job. Cutting this movie together
Yeah.
and shooting it all around because I honestly don't notice. I didn't notice anything like that. I didn't notice anything like there was never a moment where I was like, oh, that's a dog suit or something. I don't think. So the way it was
Yeah.
edited and shot, they hid and disguised everything pretty well.
Even the dog's tail wagging.
Yes.
No, I agree. I mean, one last scene I do want to mention because going back to subtlety and non-jump scares. Remember that scene where Brett, which is Cujo's actual owner, the little boy, the 12-year-old little boy, he's calling Cujo's name and it's really really foggy and misty outside of his house and
Oh
he keeps
yeah.
calling it. It's right before him and his mom leave for the trip and then he turns around and Cujo's right there and he's growling at him and he looks but instead of again it being a loud jump scare, he just turns around and the dog's right there. So it kind of is creepy and then he
Yeah.
just growls at him and he's like, Cujo, it's me. I wouldn't hurt you. And he keeps growling and he's like, it's Brett. And as soon as I love that because as soon as he says Brett, and I don't know how they got the dog to do this, it almost looks like he's like, oh shit, like in the dog's face, it's almost like that's Brett, that's the boy that I'm supposed to protect or whatever. And then he walks
Right.
away slowly into the
Yeah,
mist. It's so
I remember saying that when that scene was happening too. I liked that because I liked seeing the progression of the rabies and the dog going crazy because I liked it at that moment. Yeah,
yeah,
that he in that moment it's kind
he
of
still had
sad
enough
too.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
still recognize his person
right, exactly.
and turn around and walk away. But then by the end of the movie, if they had come home instead of Donna and Tad,
Yeah,
uh, he would have just probably killed them, and that's really messed up. And
exactly. That's why I kind of, as fucked up as it sounds, I do like that all the good people in the movie survive and get away. I mean, the asshole Camber dad gets killed and he's a dick anyway, and so does his loud, obnoxious beer drinking friend. But
well, that's
all the
good
good characters survive.
because our favorite Stephen King movie, none of the good characters live. It's very sad. Pet Cemetery,
Oh my God, I know. Don't even say it. It
very
makes me
sad.
sad. So yeah, well, I think that's all I wanted to talk about. If you have anything to add or say, I think I do want to do like overall thoughts, and then I have a very last big question, but it'll take you probably 2 seconds to answer, so I want to save it for last, and it's kind of like a climactic
Okay.
question. So if you have anything to add or anything, yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think I just
Well, overall, did you like? That's not the question, but did you like it overall? I guess is what I want to know.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Okay, cool,
I did. It's definitely something I would watch again. It's
awesome,
definitely I can see why it's such an iconic movie and Stephen
right?
King's story.
Story, yeah,
I think it was really well done, and like I said, I liked that it was simpler than a
yeah.
lot of the other things. It was
Well,
nice. That was refreshing.
right. I think that's why I've always loved it too, for all the things you just said, the simplicity, the refreshing storyline that was so different. Um, do you think personally it would work as a remake today? Like, do you think it's something Hollywood would touch, or do you think they'd be like, oh no, that's boring. Nobody wants to see a movie about a rabid dog. Like, what do you
I
think?
think it is something what with the It and the Pet Cemetery and a lot of other Stephen King things that
Right.
have been made, even some original stories like things that haven't been made before have now been
Right.
made into TV shows and movies and things. Um, I think it's something that they would do. Um,
Yeah,
they're
unfortunately.
I think they would think, oh, this is boring and too simple.
So they'd amp it up and
They
make it
would
work.
add a bunch. You always say that one of the things you hate about remakes, a lot of remakes, is that they
Yeah,
overcomplicate things. You
they
know,
do.
so they would add something like,
They'd show
you
some big
know,
sex scene between Donna
they
and Steve. I
would,
remember
or
you said it. So yeah.
they'd give an explanation for why she cheated on him by making him,
like like
awful
abusive or
or
something. Yeah,
like
something,
he's this
something.
messed up drug addict or something.
Right,
They would,
right.
yeah. So I don't think this movie is safe, unfortunately.
I know. I would like to think because it does have such a simple story. Maybe it would be, but like you said, they would definitely overcomplicate it so it would work for
But
today and CG
we
the blood on the dog.
they for sure would do that.
Yeah.
Sadly, though, we not that long ago were saying like, oh, they're never going to remake Pet Cemetery. We'd never see that.
Oh, that's true. That's
And then it
true.
was the first one after it. So
Yeah, because I thought that story was too simple or even almost too dark maybe to work in 2019. And clearly I was right because they changed everything that made Pet Cemetery special and good. But I
yeah,
mean, the fact that they did touch it at all, and yeah, you're right. I feel like Cujo today would just, ugh, they would cheapen it up a lot. I really hope they don't touch it. And it'd be full of jump scares. Every time Cujo attacks the car would be some type of jump scare. It'd be so predictable. I miss the subtlety of horror. But
They
anyway.
have like, she's able to start the car and get away, and then they'll have like some big action chase sequence where he's like
Yeah.
chasing the car through the highway.
Yeah, yeah, like fucking when Leon just runs over like the dogs and the soccer mom. I love when Josh said that. Shout out Josh, you're hilarious. But yeah, that. Oh my God. My last thought or question or whatever you want to call it. So I kind of went through everything I wanted to go through with you, remake everything. Um, so the book ending, did I ever tell you that it is a little bit different than the movie ending? And I as much as I don't want to spoil it in case you do want to read the book, I kind of want to because I want to know your thoughts on
Okay.
how the movie ended versus
I
the book.
yeah,
Do you?
I don't think you told me, or I don't remember if you did.
Okay, so the movie basically ends, and I'm sure you remember, but just to kind of recap, with her getting into the house, she actually ends
Uh-huh.
up, she like knocks Cujo out, like you think he's dead or whatever, but she ends up limping up to the house.
Yeah.
Tad's like almost, he's literally dying, like he's having one of them seizures again, but he's like not coming back from it. So she puts water on his face, she does like the mouth to mouth, she does chest compressions and everything, and then he ends up waking up, and then Cujo, I think either right when he wakes up or whatever, Cujo like ends up coming through the window or whatever, and then she has the gun in her hand from the sheriff, which was smart of her to pick up, and she ends up shooting him, and that's like the final showdown, and he's dead and everything. And then she walks out on the porch, and that's when Vic comes up because Vic finally puts two and together, like, oh, maybe they're at the Cambers, and he shows up, and then it does like a freeze frame of her coming out all dirty and bloody with Tad in her arms, and they, I guess, she
Yeah.
reunites with her husband, and then it's just freeze frame, and then it's like, so it's kind of like a happy ending. It's like, okay, the family survived, and now she's got to go work on things with her husband, and it's kind of like symbolic for like, okay, they're probably going to work things out. She's been through a lot of shit. Here we go. Everything's good. Well, in the book,
I'm
Stephen King always
curious.
he's always got to be so much more depressing in his books. Okay,
Oh,
even before I tell you, I am going to say Stephen King even regrets this ending. He said when he saw the movie, he actually preferred the movie ending and wished he had gone with an ending more lighthearted. But in the
Did
book,
Cujo
Tad
did Cujo win and kill them?
well, in the book, Tad actually ends up dying. He ends up dying from dehydration or the seizure that he has. So he dies, but Donna survives. And I honestly don't remember if Vic. I think the ending is pretty much the same as the movie, except she doesn't save Tad. And I think she does get him into the house and she tries to wet his face and do the compressions and everything, but he just dies right there in the Camber's house. And then I think there might be another final showdown with Cujo where he comes in and she shoots him or whatever. So like she survives, Vic obviously survives, but like Tad dies. So it's like, well, now you already have this broken family. Now they lost their kid, and now there's like no hope. And it's like, so I think the movie ending is, even though I don't mind dramatic endings and I don't mind when they, you know, killed. This is gonna sound horrible, but killing children off, if it fits with the story, that sounds really bad. It's obviously depressing, but if it, I don't always mind a dramatic sad ending. But I think for this specific
Right.
story, they already went through hell. Like let them all survive as a family together and like heal and get better. So what do you think of both endings, and which one do you honestly think is better?
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I don't, I think him dying would have been unnecessary and seems unnecessary and just like
Mm-hmm.
just a bleak way to end the story. I
Right, because
think,
with Gage dying, it's necessary because
yeah,
it sets the story. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, no, I agree with that. I wouldn't like that. I don't think.
But what if it's supposed to be tied to Pet Cemetery in the book, and like Vic goes crazy one day and just finds out about the ground and buries Tad up there? Or what if they like
Oh, we were
bury
talking
Cujo up there?
about exactly. We talked about that when we watched the movie. They totally should have done,
A
you know,
crossover.
yeah, do like a sequel to Cujo and have Fred Gwynn have a cameo.
Oh, that'd be so great. It's like, well, if you thought the
He
dog was crazy before, just wait. Just bury him up
he
there.
just shows up on the farm to get his car fixed, and then
Oh no, because I wouldn't want him to die that way. Even though he already dies pretty horribly in Pet Cemetery by getting his throat ripped out. But um, yeah.
no,
So
like
so you said
he
you would
just
prefer.
he'll just show no, he just shows up and it's a normal day and whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, my dog died or whatever, and he's just like,
Oh, and
oh yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and and then he can feel the power of the ground coming over
Oh my
again. He's just
God,
like,
Dylan, use your
oh.
editing skills. Do a crossover trailer. I would love that. Make it seem like it's legit. Like Judd feels bad for fucking, oh God, what's his name? The Camber kid. I forget his first name. Brett. He feels bad for Brett, and he's like, hey, not that. Because apparently where Judd lives and where the Cambers live is kind of close. Because in the book, when he references the Saint Bernard that went rabid, he says just a few miles up whatever road he says. So apparently they're close. So I'm sure if the Cambers were aware of the ground. I wonder if they would use it on Cujo, and then he'd come back even more fucking fucked up and crazy. Imagine a Cujo, a rabid dog that's already insane and like, I wonder if he would just come back nice, just like the dumb sequel of Pet Sematary where, the mean stepdad comes back. Actually, the Clancy Brown, I love him. He comes back all stupid.
All right. Now I want a total 100% crossover movie. And now
Crossover.
like you can have Church and Cujo working together.
Yeah, Church and Cujo just tag teaming it on everybody.
Church
That
is so
is
tiny
great.
she can just be riding on his back.
Oh, I love that. Oh my god. All right, well, I guess that was
That's our
Cujo,
pitch.
and that's he just keeps doing it. I love it. That's another reason I'm glad I showed you that, because now we can kind of like fuck with the Stephen King lore and universe, because they do have a lot of parallels. Pet Sematary and Cujo. I mean, most of them, both of them have to do with an animal a lot of the time. Even though, I mean, Pet Sematary is way more layered than that, but you know what I mean. That would work. Let's do it. Or they should have had like in the movie of Pet Sematary, they should have had like a grave marker that said Cujo. That would have been kind of cool. But then again, who would it? I guess because like I guess Brett and his mom Charity, the Camber son and wife, are still alive, so like they could come home and see this tragedy and like see Cujo dead and like want to go bury him. That would have worked. That would have been kind of cool. But anyway.
Yeah, you could even just have him in the normal Pet Cemetery, just as like a little Easter egg.
That's what I mean. Like just have it like a little. That's what I mean. Like a cute little Easter egg of like a
Can you imagine how
cross.
awesome it would have been, like in that amazing opening of Pet Cemetery? There's just a sweep of the camera, it goes past the gravestone that says Cujo.
That would be awesome. And I think Mary Lambert would have, like, she's clever enough to have done that, but maybe nobody even thought about it. That would have been so cool. That would be awesome. They intertwine in some way. I kept saying, like, I wanted to save the ending for last, which I guess I kind of did. But I do want to ask, are there any, and you can be honest, because we both said we're going to be completely honest with each other. So I'm just curious, do you think there are any negatives at all with the story, the movie, the acting, anything at all that like, stood out to you for whatever reason?
Not really a negative as far as something it would be like I hated it. No, I don't think so. It's definitely not, for me, anywhere near the Pet Cemetery, like things that I love.
Right.
Like a Pet
Right.
Cemetery or something, like another Stephen King story, or The Mist I also personally love. But I enjoyed it. I did. I liked it.
Okay, cool.
No, I enjoyed it.
No, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of Stephen King movies I do like ahead of it, and even Stephen King books and stories that I do prefer. But I do think, and maybe again, I grew up with it, so it may be a little bit different for me. I think when
Yeah.
you show somebody something that you were like really hype as a kid and you grew up with it, it may not always, and even though you obviously have said a million times you did really enjoy it, it may not always be the same feeling for somebody that sees it as an adult versus
Yeah.
like a kid. So I completely understand that. But I'm glad nothing like negative specifically like stuck out in your head,
No,
because I
not really.
personally, yeah, because I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a completely flawless movie, because I'm sure, if somebody really sat and dug it apart, I'm sure they could find things. But just the same, people could do the same with Pet Sematary, and I fucking love that movie, and I think that movie's flawless. I absolutely, absolutely love that movie. I can't emphasize it enough. So yeah, I'm so glad you liked it. I'm glad we were able to talk about it, and yeah, I think unless you have anything else to add, then that was Cujo. Everybody go see it. And if they remake it, then everybody has to at least see the original once, because I fucking hate that. But anyway, Cujo 1983. Check it out. It's actually was it on Netflix? Did we watch it, or was it Amazon that we watched it? It's free right now somewhere.
Amazon
So
on
yeah, if you
Prime.
have Amazon Prime,
Um,
guys, and you want to see it, go watch it.
yes. And first viewing for me, I think it's worth your time. I think it's a good movie.
Woo! See, don't. I mean, I'm the biased one. I'm the one that grew up with it and loves it. But if Dylan's saying that, that's awesome. So yeah, if you like horror and you like Stephen King and you've never checked it out, check it out. It's very unique, and obviously we already basically spoiled the whole thing for you here anyway. But go check it out. It's awesome. But thank you guys for watching and listening. There's definitely more to come with different reviews and horror movies and different things. Dylan and I are on a kick right now where we are showing each other, like I said in the beginning, different horror movies from our past and childhood that we absolutely love that the other person has never seen. So it's pretty cool. We may end up actually doing a few that we both love and know too, because there's a lot of horror movies we both bond over. But I think as of right now, we're both having a lot of fun showing each other things and getting each other's reaction to things. So
Yes,
stay
it's a lot of
tuned.
fun.
Yeah. All right. Bye, guys.